congratulations on this album. I've had a chance to sit down and take a listen to it, and it is an absolutely amazing album, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we're very proud of it. We knew when we were making it, we knew that this one was probably a little bit hard. And, I mean, they're all good as far as I'm concerned, but this one really is, us is really special as well.
Was there something about it when you were recording it that made it feel like there was something special happening? Because it's certainly come across in the album itself, but were you guys really aware of that when you were recording it?
I think so. Because, I mean, we're all, having been in the game so long, let alone we're all still huge fans. And when something's got cool hooks to it, or, you know, a cool, you know, vocal part to it, or a cool lead to it, we know it. You know, everybody does. And I just felt on this record, it seemed like every song had one. You know what I mean? And it does. I'll go through the whole record, and there's something cool about each song, or very unique about each song that's blistering heavily, blistering violent, you know, very updated lyrical content with what's going on in the world today. I mean, it's really right there, very aggressive album, and it's just, when we were doing it, we were like, yeah, this one is the opus. This is a career-defining record right here.
Yeah. What was the writing process like? Because like you said, this album is heavily influenced by what was going on around the world during this time, especially with songs like Clickbait and things like that. What was the writing process like? Because there seems like there was so much that you guys wanted to say about the world we live in with this album.
I think Exodus has always been very socially aware, and always done really in a very tongue-in-cheek kind of manner. And I think this album was very straightforward brutality, and everything that was really going on was really brought forth. I mean, Anti-Seed, Fires of Division, REMF. I mean, there's so many you can go after. Slipping into Madness, Elitist, they've all got a signature resonation from the lyrical content, or the approach, or just the mentality. I mean, I tell people it's not a nice album, and for a heavy metal fan, that's exactly what you want to hear. You know, this is not a nice record. The lyrical content, it's just the delivery, the guitars, the drums, everything is very abrasive on this album. There's no songs that let up. Just for, you know, I think it's 60 minutes or 65 minutes, it just pummels you from start to finish.
Yeah. Were you all writing individually? Like, what was that actual writing process like? Because this feels like an album that, like I said, it talks about the world that we're in, but it also talks about, it's a very personal album. That's how it felt to me. Were you all writing individually?
I wrote Elitist, the lyrics to Elitist, and I wrote the lyrics to Slipping into Madness. And I always write from the heart. Tom actually wrote all of the lyrics to The Years of Death and Dying, and Gary actually wrote everything else, which is normal, because he's, you know, pretty much the main songwriter. And Lee Aldis wrote the music. So basically, Gary had nothing to do with Slipping into Madness. Lee wrote the music, and I wrote the lyrics, but Gary was in on everything else. And if I've got to give credit where credit is due, the compositions on this record that he came up with were over the top. Over the top. Every single last one of them. And I don't know if it's something that he had to prove or whatever, but it sure proves the fact that Jeff Hanneman didn't make a mistake when they got that guy in to fill in, because he's the real deal. And I mean, I think that most of all the Exodus records show it, but this one really, really shows it.
Yeah.
All around lyrical writer, rhythm player, lead player, composer, arranger, producer. I mean, he wore every damn hat on this album. So, you know, you're going to give the award to him. He's the one that's going to support the award.
Definitely, yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the recording a little bit later on, but while we're on the writing process, this album feels like a time capsule. Did it feel important to you guys that you needed to capture what was going on in the world at this time, because listening to this album, I reckon even in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, people are going to know what was going on in the world at this time. Was that important for you to capture?
I don't know if that was more important to capture than it was to make an amazing record, period, whatever it had to be. So I think that sometimes you just fall into those things and the subject matters just come with what it was. Because I was thinking things, and Tom was thinking things, and Gary's thinking things, and Lee's thinking things, and Jack's thinking things, and it all came together, and it made for that, and I think that had a lot to do with it. But I don't think we all went in like every song has to be the best song on the album. So it wasn't like, oh, well, we wrote songs for the record, but we're going to put 12 on. We wrote 12 songs for the record because these 12 songs are killer, and that's how we approached every one of them. And there wasn't one where I was like, yeah, that's kind of a filler, you know what I mean? I'm going to click forward through that. I love every one of them's got, really good hook to it. And I think that the album is sequenced. The balance is just great when you listen to it. One of the best sequenced records I've ever heard, and it's my record and I had nothing to do with it. Gary sequenced the album, and when I listened to it, the way he said that the songs are going to go back in January, I think it was, when we were done mixing and mastering it, and then when I listened to him, oh wow, this record's got such a good flow to it, and I think that has a lot to do with the sequencing.
Definitely. Like I said, this is just one of those albums that sometimes it takes you a couple of listens to get into an album, but this album grabbed me from the very start when I was starting to listen to it, and I think a lot of people are going to find that out there. But I wanted to talk to you about heading up to Tom's house up in the mountains. Tell us a little bit about that and what that meant for the band and what that meant that you were able to do, being away from a traditional kind of studio.
I think it's to your advantage because the traditional studio isn't the game anymore. You can bring as long as you got a Pro Tool rig and a nice drum room, you can do anything anymore. So basically, we flew Steve Lagudi in from New York, and we flew his recording rig in. And Tom has some property, has a house and a big man cave on his property, and we kind of transformed it into a sound studio, and it was easy because we rented another house to stay in, and the five of us were up there, just no distractions. It was going on in the world, so we couldn't go and tour anyway, So we just, it was easy. When I wasn't recording, Jack was recording. When Jack wasn't recording, Lee would be in there. If Lee wasn't in, Gary was doing something. And that's where this guy was doing leads. Or they were mixing down this song, and then tomorrow at 11 o'clock, you're going to do it and do your vocals. And then when you're done, Lee's going to do his rhythms, and then Jack's going to do this on, and we had it all. We worked after each other, you know what I mean? And every night we had dinner together. We had this cool house where, after a certain time during the night, at 8 o'clock or whatever, they stopped working, and we always had, steak dinner, and we barbecued, and everybody got together. It was a band effort, and I feel that that's why the record is so great. To me, I keep saying that in the interviews. It's great because we went up there as a band. We recorded it and wrote it as a band. When the bands do that, especially back in the day, in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, bands, we got together and wrote records together. This is how they're so good, and I think that falls on with this one as well.
Do you think that's going to be one of the positives from the pandemic, is that bands have learnt that power again of getting together and working together? But also, I think I've noticed here in Australia, a lot of bands have realised that you don't need to go into a studio to record an album anymore. Like here in Melbourne, studios have been closed for over 200 days now because of the pandemic. Do you think that bands have learnt the power of recording together, but also different ways to record during the pandemic?
Well, that's always been a way to record since the digital age. I mean, you know, as long as you have a computer and Pro Tools, you can do it. I think that it brought bands closer together because they had no choice.
Yep.
You know, and they couldn't play. So if you know, I'm probably in the next year or two, because I know that vinyl is 6 months behind time. So if you finish your record now, and you've got to wait 6 months to get the vinyl produced, if you want to do a simultaneous release with your vinyl, you know, because nobody was working. But I think that we're probably going to get the best music in the next couple of years because bands had no choice.
Yeah.
You know, and work together. And so I know it worked for us. I know we'll do that again. It looks like that's the way to go.
Yeah.
You know, it just makes sense.
I was going to ask that because I just watched a documentary on George Martin's Montserrat Studios, and they were saying that there were bands there like Duran Duran and the Police that had never really experienced that all heading into the studio together, and they just found when they went to Montserrat that it brought them closer together as a band, and a few said they arrived as a band and left as a family. Did you find that with this as well, going up to Tom's at Mountain House, that it kind of brought the band closer together like a family?
We've always operated like a family. You know, when we go out on the road, we go out to dinner together. We go do things together. A lot of bands that have been around as long as us, I know for a fact, and I'm not going to mention names, they don't even go with each other. They won't do stuff with the crew. You know, we go out all the time. I mean, like, I remember in the Europe tour last year, God, I went out to dinner with Gary, like, probably 20 nights. We went out to dinner, you know, and, hey, Zet, let's go off tonight, or, you know, let's go out to dinner. You know, everybody hangs out. So, like I said, after the day of recording, we would get food, chicken, steaks, whatever, and we'd come up to the house that we rented, and we would all, you know, cook and hang out or go over the parts or ask each other, yo, so what about this? And cook, and everybody would sit at the table and eat. I think there's pictures of it or video of it, because I know we did a ton of video while we were doing that type of stuff. But I think that always creates a family atmosphere. It goes to show you, you know, how it all started and how it ended up.
Definitely.
You know, so I agree that wholeheartedly. I believe that.
Definitely. Well, I know we are running out of time very, very quickly, but before I go, I just wanted to ask about Par's artwork. The artwork on the front of this album looks absolutely amazing. I'm looking at it right now. What was your first thoughts when you saw this artwork?
Like, you know, back when I was a kid, you know, in the 70s and whatever, you know, I bought a record, you know, I'm, you know, 13, 14 years old, 77, 78. I'm buying a record, and I would play the album on my turntable and lay on the bed and stare at the album cover if it was something to look at. This is one of those album covers. You know, this is one of those ones where you can see all kinds of different shit going on there. And I thought, you know, it's just like, wow, the record is so good, and the album cover is so good. That never happens to us. One or the other, you know what I mean? It's usually like, well, the record's cool, the album cover's great, you know what I mean? Or the album cover's cool, but the record is fucking awesome. I mean, back in the day, people loved Flesh is the Flesh and Fabulous Disaster. I hate those album covers. It's just us on the album covers. They're so stupid. And so if I look back at that now, I'm like, I love this one. This one's going to be a great T-shirt. I can't wait to see it on a T-shirt.
Definitely. I will definitely want one of those T-shirts. And this is the kind of artwork I want to see on my wall as well. Like, it's amazing. Mate, I know we are right out of time, so I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today, but also thank you for all of the music that you have made over the years. It has been an absolute pleasure chatting to you and listening to your music over the years.
Thanks, Dave. We ain't going anywhere soon, man. This is all we know how to do, so we're going to take it out for the long run, my friend.
Awesome. Well, stay safe, and hopefully we see you in Australia when everything opens back up.